Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the Axolotl pattern for market plushies in a much slower, much more beginner friendly capacity. So for this video I'm going to be showing you how to make these little guys. This is a no-sew pattern, so you shouldn't need a needle except to weave in the ends if you do it with a needle, or you can do it with your hook. I'm going to be showing you with plain coloured yarn because it's going to be a bit easier to see. This is just going to be a little bit more in-depth, a lot slower than my other video to make it easier to follow along for any beginners who might want to. So to start off, we're going to be doing the gills. We do them first because they're worked in round, which means that when we go round and round in our magic ring, we will then single crochet these gills into the work rather than sewing them in afterwards. You can sew them in afterwards, but it's a lot more work and it's very, very easy to do this. And then the bobbles are attached and the surface crochet is done afterwards. For this pattern, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a 5mm crochet hook, a stitch marker, some darker coloured yarn for the gills and some lighter coloured yarn for the body. This is the Yarn Smith. This is King Cole's Yummy Yarn. You can use pretty much any. I like to pick a darker and lighter colour from each for each one. So this is the darker yellow, and then there's a lighter yellow in the funfetti type yarn. You're also going to need safety eyes and polyfill stuffing to stuff the body at the end. You can embroider eyes as well, it's entirely up to you, and you can use either embroidery thread or double knit yarn to make any mouths or anything that you would like to add on to it later. So first off, we're going to start with our darker coloured yarn. So I'm going to do it in pink today as I have two very lovely colours of pink. Find the end of your yarn. So to make these gills is a little bit difficult, but I'm going to show you very, very nice and slowly at the start. You're not going to need your stitch marker for now, so pop that out of the way. So we're going to chain 5 to start, and then the pattern is 2 single crochet, picot, single crochet into the second single crochet space on the chain, picot, single crochet into the next chain space, and single crochet again, and then finish off and leave a short tail. So what that means, I'm going to put the pattern up as I go so you can read it along as you go, so you learn how to read patterns as well. So to start off, we're going to do a slip knot. You can do this any way you like, but this is how I like to do it because I find it a lot easier. But it's basically just a knot that you don't pull the end through, so you can take it apart as well. So we're going to start off with a chain 5. So you're going to yarn over, pull through that loop, yarn over, pull that through that loop, yarn over, and repeat until you have 5 on your crochet hook. So you should count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are going to skip the first chain, the chain closest to the hook. This is to make it squared off rather than at an angle. Turn your work to the side. You're going to single crochet into the second chain from the hook by yarning over, putting your hook through the top of the chain, yarning over and pulling up a loop, so you have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. You are then going to do 1 in the next stitch along in the next chain. So this will be the 3rd chain that was initially from the hook. Pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both of them. You are then going to picot, and to picot you're going to chain 2 from where you are. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 2 chains here. You're going to ignore the first one and go into the second one and do a single crochet into this chain, which is yarning over, pulling through 2. You are then going to go into the same chain 3 space that you were in initially and do a single crochet in here. So it's 2 in 1 space. So you have a single crochet, the chain 2, the single crochet, and then another single crochet. So the picot and then a single crochet. You're going to picot once again. So chain 2, go back into that second chain from the hook. So you ignore the one closest to the hook and you go to the one closest to the single crochet that you just did. Single crochet into that space, and then you're going to single crochet into the next chain along. This will be the 4th one from the hook or the second to the last. Single crochet into there, and then single crochet into the very last chain from the hook. And that will give you a little 3-prong gill, well, a sort of bump and 2 prongs. You're then going to cut the yarn. You don't have to leave it very long because we're not sewing it in, so don't waste yarn if you don't have to. And then that is your first gill complete, and then it sits this way up with the tail ends at the bottom, and the same on the other side. So we're going to make a second one of these, so I'll go through it again but a little bit quicker, and you can re-watch the video if you need to. So very quickly, slip knot, make sure it's tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet and second one from the hook, single crochet into the next one as well, picot if you can, single crochet into there, single crochet back into that same stitch as the last one, picot again, and then single crochet into the next 2 stitches into the 4th and 5th stitch. Once you've done that, give it a little trim. And then you have your 2 gills that will sit on either side of your axolotl's head. Once you are finished with those 2 gills, you can move on to the body. So I'm going to be using this one because it's a bit of a lighter colour. You can get very similar colours, but this is a different brand of yarn. I'm going to use this one because it's a full one. You can do this in pretty much any colour. I do it in oranges, blues, greens, yellows, purples, pinks, and obviously the funfetti colours. So don't feel restricted to just doing it in pink. They do look great in any other colours. So we're going to start the head and the body. This is worked in continuous rounds. So we start off with a magic ring and worked in continuous rounds to form the head, and the body is attached, and the feet as well. So I'll show you when and where to do those too. To do a magic ring, starting off, we're going to hold our yarn facing towards us, so not the other way around. We're going to hold it facing towards us. Hold your thumb over your 2 fingers, 2 forefingers, split your fingers off. There is a video on my channel of how to do this in depth. Make a cross. Hold your working yarn behind the first loop underneath your ring finger. Go under and over, pull up a loop, but don't pull it off your fingers, and then from your working yarn, pull it through that chain space. To make a chain, pull it through that loop to make a chain rather. I undo it as well because it's chenille yarn and it's a bit of a pain to work with. Little tip, do 2 single crochets and then have a little tug on the yarn to see if it's going to pull through at all, because it does muss up a little bit. You're going to put 6 single crochets into here, so there's 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Once you have all 6, pull that loop nice and tight. If it doesn't go, just undo a stitch, try again, pull it a little bit tighter. Oh, I undid 2, whoops, pulled on the wrong one. There we go. And then add those 2 back. This yarn is nice to work with, but not always easy. And then make sure that loop pulls nice and tight. You shouldn't have a gap in the middle. If you do, pull it tighter. If you pull it too tight though, you do risk snapping the yarn, which happens all the time. If you do snap it, just start again, cut from about here so that your yarn you're working with again isn't tampered with, isn't hard to work with. So I count backwards so I don't end up using the chain as a first stitch, making sure I am going through both of those loops as it's my stitch, and it's a full stitch, not a back loop or front loop only. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, go back into that same space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. You're going to repeat that 6 times until you have 12 single crochets in 6 stitches. So it's 2 per stitch all the way around. I just count to 12. I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on until I have 12 stitches. And then I do another cursory count at the end, because if you start off with the incorrect amount of stitches, you're going to continue with the incorrect amount of stitches, and it's going to make the pattern a little bit more difficult to follow. But don't feel the need to constantly unpick, as it can also be a bit of a burden. Once you have 12 single crochets, you are going to move on to round 3, which is 1 single crochet 1 increase. So you can do 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then 2 in the one after. I like to put my stitch marker in at this point. So I pulled up the loop so it wouldn't pull it through. At the base of this stitch, I go through both the loops that you can see on the front side to keep my stitch marker in place, and that marks the end of my round. So all of my stitches will, all the last parts of the stitches will end up in that one space. So to make this easier for myself, I just count to 3. So I do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 until I get back around to the stitch marker, and you should have an increase in the stitch with the stitch marker. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and now because I am working in 2 stitches in succession, I know that my next 2 stitches are in the correct place. I'm going to have a single crochet here and then an increase in this one. If you are ending with this one being a increase in this one single crochet, you've probably done something wrong somewhere. Just count your stitches at the end. You should have 18 in this round. If you don't have 18 for whatever reason, you might need to unpick and go back and start again, making sure you're concentrating on how many stitches you're having to have the correct amount by the end. Super important to count your stitches to follow the pattern properly. It doesn't always matter, but it is a good habit to get into. And yeah, it's just little tips and tricks from me. So the next round we are going to be doing is going to include the gills. So get your gills ready for this next round. You are going to hold on to them facing inward with the working yarn or the waste yarn at the bottom of the face, and you're going to single crochet them in. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to do 1 single crochet to start to get it to either side of the head. And then you are going to, what I like to do is go into one part of the gill, so that you want 4 single crochets into this one. So you're going to do 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. So you should have the 4 initial chains. So you chained 5, you ignored 1, and then you should have the rest of the 4 chains to work into along here. So hold it facing you. I go into the part that I want to stitch in, move that out of the way. I then go into the next stitch along, yarn over, pull it up through the first one to make sure it pulls through properly, and then pull it through the gills. And then you should have 2 loops on your hook. You can yarn over and pull through both. You're then going to go into the next part of the gill, so not back into the same space. You're going to go to the next part of the gill, push the crochet hook through, and then move it out of the way so you can see where you're going into next, making sure you're not going back into the same stitch on your head. Going into the next one, pulling it through, making sure that's pulled through correctly, and then pulling through the gill, yarning over and pulling through 2. You're then going to do that a 3rd time. And once more. On this last one, you're going to tuck these tail ends in. So go into the loop, have the tail ends tucked under your working yarn, so they come right out of the way. You go through the gill, pull the tails out of the way, go through the body or the head and the body, pull up through both of those, yarn over and pull through 2, and then you have no tail ends on this side. It's all tucked away back here. It's not going to pull through, and it's done nice and neatly. You are then going to do 5 single crochet, make sure you're not working into the same stitch again, along, and then get ready to do the second gill. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And once you've done that, you are going to hold it with the tail end down again, because you want it to be pointing upwards. If you don't, it will be facing down. It's only very slight, but I really like that they point up a little bit. I do feel like they look quite sad when you don't. And then with the tail end down, you're going to once again have it facing like sat against the face. You're going to pull the the tail ends out of the way. So I go into the hook, into the gill, keep my tails out of the way underneath my working yarn. So I pull the working yarn over the top of it. This might be a little bit fiddly if you've not done it before. Identify my next stitch that I want to work into, pull up the loop, pull it through the gill, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and then automatically the tail ends are right out of the way. Identify the next part of the gill that you can put your hook through that's equal all the way along. Go into the next available stitch, pull up that loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and again into the third bit, through the gill, through the head, and then through the last bit, through the gill, through the head, pull up that loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then to close off, or to complete this round, you're just going to do 4 more single crochets. So you should have 5 single crochet at the top and 5 single crochet at the bottom, and 4 on either side for the gills. And then that gives you the start of the head. At this point, you can add your safety eyes. You're going to add them equidistant on either side of the head. You can add it a bit later, but we're going to do 1 more round of single crochets, and then we're going to start decreasing, so it's easier to do it about now. Here I have my safety eyes. These are my 10mm safety eyes. You can use slightly bigger ones, you can use slightly smaller ones. These are the right size for what my yarn size is, and I think they look better with these little, well, some of them have bigger eyes. These ones are slightly bigger, these ones are slightly smaller. So I'm going to show you with the smaller eyes so you can see what they look like. You're going to put the safety eyes between rows 2 and 3 on the face. So the middle one is your first round, the second circle is your second round, and the third one is your third round. So between rows 2 and 3, you want them about equidistant on the face. So you're going to put it about halfway down the face and insert the safety eye through. Count your row again, make sure it's in the right place, and then they should sit nice and equally. And then making sure that the top of your axolotl is definitely this part here, and it's pointing to where the gills are pointing upwards. That identify, because it does look the exact same the other way around, but the gills then point down. So make sure you're happy with your eye placement, lay it down, move everything out of the way, and then secure the backs of your eyes onto your work. Make sure you hear the pop, and then you know it's on there. Push it as far as you can, and then repeat for the other side. Make sure your eyes are in the right place before you put the backs on, otherwise you're going to be sorely disappointed when you look at it. And then that is your safety eyes secured. I'm not going to need any more for this project. And then from there, you are going to do 1 round of single crochets. You can move your stitch marker at the end of each round. I don't, because I know that like this stitch is the last one. It will eventually end up going this way quite a lot, but for now it doesn't matter so much. Anyway, you're going to do 18 single crochets around until you come back to your stitch marker. You should be able to see that the last single crochets that you did around are now on the inside, so make sure you're not trying to single crochet in front of your gills, otherwise you're going to tuck them away. So pull them away from you, or pull them towards you, away from the head, so you can identify the stitches behind them and work around without interrupting where the gill placement is. So it should be nice and easy to do. And then 5 single crochet until you get to the next gill, and then once again pull that gill out of the way. You will have your stitches available to you after that. And then work your way back around to your stitch marker. Once there, you're going to move on to round 6, and you're going to do 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then a decrease in the 2 after that. So 1 single crochet, 1 decrease, it takes up 3 stitches again as well. So 1 single crochet in the next and then a decrease. You're going to go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, into the stitch after that, pull up another loop, yarn over and pull through all 3, and then those 2 stitches become 1 stitch and you have this little bulky bit. You can do invisible decreases if you like, but I don't really bother with those. So 1 single crochet in the next and then decrease in the 2 after, so pull up that loop, go into the next one, pull up another loop, yarn over and pull through 2, single crochet in the next, pull up 2 loops from 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through 3, single crochet, decrease, single crochet, decrease. At this point, if you haven't used a stitch marker, you should be counting your stitches to make sure that you're going to have the right amount. Single crochet and decrease. And then you can see the first decrease that we did and that and then the first single crochet. So you are back to the start if you haven't used a stitch marker. From here you're going to do 6 more decreases. So this is each of the next 2 stitches in succession are going to be decreased until you have 6 single crochet stitches left. So pull up a loop, pull up another loop, pull through 2, pull up a loop, pull up another loop, pull through 2. You're going to do this 6 times in total. Or until you are back to your stitch marker. There we go. So now we have the base of the head. We're at the neck at this point, and then we're going to bring it back out again. So we're going to start increasing again. This time we're going to be working through the front loop only, FLO. So for 6 increases in the front loop only, this is a full stitch when you go through both sides of this little V. This is a back loop only when you go through just the back loop. And this is a front loop when you go through just the front loop. So you go up and forward, you don't go down on yourself, you go up and you bring it towards you. You're going to increase in each of these, which means you're going to do 2 single crochets in each stitch around until you have 12 single crochets. So going through the front loop only, you just want 1 loop on your hook when you go through it. Making sure you're putting 2 in each loop. So that you can have 12 at the very end. I think this is the last one. When you don't move your stitch marker, your beginning of your rows gradually shift. So you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on where the start and the ends of your rows are, because if I finished here I would have too many. I'm just going to count I've got enough. 1, 2, 3, 4. So once you have 12 single crochets, you're going to move on to round 9, which is 1 single crochet, 1 increase all the way around. So 1 single crochet. This is through both loops this time. So you're going to go through both and not just the front loop. When you go through the front loop only, it pulls the work towards you. If you go through the back loop only, it tilts it back a little bit. Also at this point you can start stuffing the head. Obviously the hole is quite small, so you can do it when you're decreasing as well, if you do struggle to stuff at the end, but if not, you can just kind of get your crochet hook in there. That's what I do. I like to stuff right at the end because I find it easier when I can hold on to the inside of my work. If you find it easier to hold your work with like as a ball and work like that, feel free to stuff now, but I don't particularly like it, so I'm going to wait until the end. I also hold it kind of flat sometimes as well, so don't think I'm going through both sides. I'm still going through that first row of stitches. So not in the front loop only, in both loops now you are going to do 1 single crochet and 1 increase. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then 2 in the one after, counting to 3 again until you have 18 stitches, or you can just count in 3s until you have 18 stitches, whatever makes it easier for you. Did I go into that? making sure you're putting 2 in the same stitch to increase. Otherwise you're going to end up with the same amount of stitches at the end of the round and you're going to count it to 18 for nothing. And there you have 18 stitches. Oh, I always like to count just in case. Perfect, 18 stitches. Once you have enough stitches, we're going to do the feet in the next round. So the front paws, I don't know what they're called for axolotls, the front feet, which are going to be these bobble stitches. I generally like to line them up with the eyes, because it's an easier way to gauge like where they are. So if you are working in rounds with your stitch marker being moved, depending on your tension, you might end up with your stitch marker in a different place. Your stitch marker might be over here, it might be in the same place as mine, it might be further down. It all depends on your tension. If your start of your round is not in the same place as mine, you are going to have to gauge by yourself where you want the bobble stitches to be. So for me, it's probably about 9 single crochets for me to get around to here, but just single crochet around, depending on where you're starting, until you are 1 stitch away from being in line with the eye. So I think I'm going to aim for my last stitch to be about here. 1, 2, 3, which is about 7 single crochets. So I'm going to do 7 single crochets and see if I like where it lines up, because it will go into the next stitch after. So single crochet around until you are 1 stitch away from being in line with the eyes. And this is all preference as well. You can kind of have the bobble stitches anywhere, kind of on the front. I like to have them like beneath the eyes. And you're also going to do 3 single crochets along to the next side. So make sure you have enough space for a bobble, 3 single crochets and another bobble, and that they line up under the eyes, which I think this is a good place to do it. So for a bobble stitch, we're going to do a bobble with 4 loops, which means that we're going to yarn over. It's basically like a double crochet. So if you know how to do a double crochet, this is going to be a bit easier. If you don't know how to do a double crochet, this might be a little bit harder, but just follow it along. I'm going to do it very nice and slowly. So yarn over before you go into the stitch. Identify the next stitch, keeping your yarn back. Go into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 of those loops, so you have 2 left on your hook, yarn over again, go back into the same loop, making sure you are going back into the same loop, pulling that loop up, yarning over, pulling through 2 more of those loops on your hook, so you have 3, yarn over again, go back into that loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, and then pull through another 2 of those stitches until you have 4 loops left. The more loops you have, the bigger the bobble will be. We're just going to go with 4 because it's quite a small piece. Yarn over again and pull through all 4 of those loops. So at the moment it doesn't look like a lot. When you go into your next stitch, which will be one of the 3 center single crochets that you're going to do, you're going to pull that loop nice and tight, making sure that it's got a lot of tension on it to make sure that your bobble pushes through and you end up with a little paw. You're going to do 2 more single crochets in a row, then I'm going to show you again how to do that bobble stitch. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, go back into that same stitch, yarn over and pull through 2 until you have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4, and then you're going to do one more single crochet afterwards that's nice and tight, and then you just push the bobble through so that it comes out, and you should have 2 little bobbles on the front, making sure that the single crochets after are nice and tight so that the bobble pushes through better. From there you're going to single crochet back to the end of your round, so you can count this. It doesn't matter if you're a stitch out or just head back around to your stitch marker wherever that may be. And then we are going to do 2 rounds of straight single crochet, so 2 rounds of 18 single crochets. So you can move your stitch marker so you know how many you've done, but I just look at the bobbles and make sure I've got 2 rows from there. So start single crocheting around, and when you get to the bobbles you're still working into the top of the bobble as if it's a normal stitch, because it should still have a V on top. Just make sure you are working into the V. So this is the single crochet before. You might have to move your work out a bit, but you should have a stitch before it and a stitch after it. That's the stitch of the bobble, and then the one after is the single crochet that you might have pulled quite tight, so just make sure that you can get into it. Your 3 in the middle, or 2 more in the middle, and then your next bobble stitch, make sure you don't go through the bobble, because if you do, you're going to kind of lose the bobble a little bit, or a lot. So make sure you're going just through the top of it, and then single crochet all the way up and around until you're back at your stitch marker, and then you're going to repeat that once more, but this time you won't have to worry so much about the bobble stitches. So keep working in these rounds until you are back around at the top, or back around to your stitch marker if you've moved it each round. You can see it's a lot easier to do this one when the bobbles have already been worked into. So keep going, pulling up those loops, making those stitches. Until you are back at the beginning of your round. Once you have completed those 2, we're going to do another row of bobbles. So you can see where your previous bobbles are. I like them to line up with the eyes as such. You're going to do another round where you come around to this side, do a bobble in line with this one, 3 single crochet, a bobble in line with this one, and then complete the round. And that will give you all 4 of your axolotl's feet. So working your way around, single crochet until you are 1 stitch away from being in line with your bobble. It can be quite hard to gauge, so don't feel bad about unpicking it and doing it again until it's perfect for you. Remember that these stitches are worked in kind of zigzags, so I'm going to do 1 more, and then I'm going to put my next bobble, so in line with the eye, in line with the bobble, and then in this one, yarn over into that loop, pull it up, pull through 2, yarn over, back in, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, back in, pull up a loop, and pull through 2 until you have 4, yarn over, pull through all 4, and then a nice tight single crochet into the next and push that bobble through. Exactly the same as the last ones. Do 2 more single crochets along, so you have 3 for the middle, and then bobble once again, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through all 4, and then make sure you have a nice tight single crochet in the next one. Push all of your bobbles out, and you should have 4 bobble stitches on your work. So from this, you're going to work your way back around to the stitch marker, or back to the top of the head, depending on if you're working towards your stitch marker or not. And then we are going to do 1 round of 1 single crochet and 1 decrease, the same as we did for the neck. So you're going to do 1 single crochet in 1 stitch and then decrease in the next. So 1, and then pull up a loop from either stitch, 1 single crochet, decrease, 1 single crochet. When you're doing a decrease or single crochets around the bobbles, again making sure you're going into the tops of them, you will still decrease around the bobbles if you need to, so don't skip them, don't add more stitches or don't take away any stitches just because the bobble's in the previous round. Make sure you are including them as well, but just don't cover them up. Once you're back around, you can begin stuffing now, you can continue stuffing now, it's up to you. Make sure you get stuffing in the head if you haven't already. I'm going to keep going because we're almost at the end, and then I'll stuff right towards the end. You're going to do now 2 rows of 12 single crochets. So you're going to single crochet around again for 2 rows like you did for the tummy. This time it is for the tail. You can continue stuffing at this point. Start stuffing at this point. It is entirely up to you, or you can stuff when I do. So that's 1 round of 12. If you struggle, just count to 12 and then count to 12 again, or count to 24, and that will get you to the end of the round. Keep moving your stitch marker if you feel the need to. So this is a good time for me to start stuffing the body. From here, you are just going to continue to decrease all the way around until you have only 3 stitches left. So you can either go ahead or you can wait for me to do it. With your cloud of stuffing, I like to break it up a bit before I put it in. But this is all personal preference. And then I just push it straight through the hole, and then I'm going to push it straight through into the head. Make sure you stuff the head properly. Otherwise you'll have a floppy head, so make sure you go all the way through and pack it nice and tight. This isn't really a pattern for making it kind of squishy. You do want to stuff quite firmly. But as I say, it's all personal preference. It is entirely up to you how much you stuff or how little you stuff. And you can also start shaping the head as well, so he looks a bit wonky. So move the eyes around, because the backs of the eyes are quite long. It might push them in a weird way, so make sure it's sitting how you want it to. Making sure you've got enough stuffing in there. Give it a feel, push it a bit more. Add some more stuffing to the body. So now I've finished stuffing the head now and I'm happy with it. I'm going to add more stuffing for the body. This does make it a little bit harder for me to hold. It might make it easier for you to hold, like as we're closing it up. So you can hold off stuffing too much until you're at the very end. But you've got to make sure you're stuffing before you close up the holes. I've done it before where I've completely finished a project and not put any stuffing in it at all. And either you unpick it and go back, or you suffer with your floppy boy. Once you have stuffed to your liking, I like to overstuff the body and then squeeze it through and back the other side, like squeeze it like into the end bit, because it cones off, so we're not like finishing it off in a normal way if you've made other plushies before. So when you squeeze it, it will like come to the end. So put enough in that even when you've squeezed it and it's moved up to the end, there's enough in the body still. So I do recommend just overstuffing the body ever so slightly, just to account for it coming out at the end. It's going to feel a bit weird, it's going to feel a bit bulky, but when you squeeze it, it will line it all out. And then we can continue closing up. So as I said, we're just going to decrease until there are 3 stitches left at the end. So you're just going to go round and round until you have a count of 3 stitches. You can't really go past it because it does make it quite hard to do. So just keep decreasing until it's too hard to do so, and then you can count your stitches. You will probably have 3 by the time you're at the end. Try and make sure you're not picking up any of the polyfill, because if you pick it up, you end up pulling it through your stitch and it comes out the other side and you have to push it back through. So try and make sure you're keeping the polyfill away. from your hook, so you don't end up pulling it through and it looks quite untidy. This isn't the same as acrylic yarn, so you can't just like use a lighter at the end of it to defuzz it. You do have to kind of deal with whatever it looks like and unpicking polyfill from the stitches, so bear that in mind. And then keep going around and around until you have 3 stitches left. I find it a lot easier to kind of fold it in half to continue around, but still make sure you're picking up a loop from each stitch. And then you should have 3 left. So here's my 3 left. So you're going to identify your next 2 stitches. So the stitch that you're in is one of them, the next stitch and the one after. You are going to go through the next stitch and straight out the other side of the 3rd stitch. So through the 2nd and 3rd stitches, and you're going to do 1 single crochet at the end through all of them. And then you can cut your yarn. You don't have to leave a long tail, but leave it long enough that you can pull it back through the body and hide it away. Make sure that's pulled nice and tightly. What I like to do, if I can't be bothered to get my sewing needle, this is after all a no-sew pattern, I like to go up through the body with the hook and then pull that tail end through without pulling up any polyfill if I can avoid it, and then poking it in, and then do that a couple of times until you've pulled that tail end all the way through your work. Don't pull it too tight because you'll end up squishing the tail down too much, so you should have a slightly pointy tail, just like so. And once you have that, we're going to start on the surface crochet. So you can get rid of your stitch marker now, you don't need that anymore. This is the body and the head completed. You're just going to finish off with this surface crochet, and then it's going to end at these bobbles here. So it's going to start at the base of the neck, follow along the back of the body, and then end along here. I'm going to do this in the darker colour because it's going to contrast it a bit more. You can do this in literally any colour, like the world is your oyster. You have free will, do whatever you like, but I'm just going to keep it consistent with normal axolotl colours. So identify the middle of the head, and then you're going to insert your crochet hook into the base of the neck. I'll do it one down. So where the line of the thinnest part of the neck is, put your crochet hook through, pull up that loop, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to chain 1 from here. So pull that working end nice and tight so you don't lose it. Make 1 chain, pull it tight again, and then leave your working end here so you can just crochet over it and you don't have to sew it through afterwards. Leave it where you're going to follow the line, so I like to go one side and then the other. So pull up a loop, single crochet, and then go through the next part. You're just going through each row one after the other so that it's equal distance, and then into the next row, keeping it in the middle, making sure you're not going to stray too far left or right. Sometimes it does happen, like here I've sort of deviated off a little bit. You can't really notice it unless you're looking for it, but just so that you know, that's something that can happen. Just make sure you're following it how you want it. You can put the surface crochet anywhere, you can do zigzags, you can do whatever you like. This is just for the pattern. As I say, you have free will, keeping that tail end down, and then you don't have to sew it in later. And then into the next bit, single crochet, keeping that tail end down. You might have to cut it a bit at the end, but it doesn't matter too much. Into the next part, single crochet, into the next part, single crochet, keeping it nice and straight. I mean, mine's deviated off a little bit, but it will never be perfect. Into the next bit, and then when you get to the single crochet at the end, you're going to do 2 surface crochets, single crochets into the tail. So 2 into that one to help bring it round, and then go through the bottom side of the axolotl. You can leave it at the end, but I find that it looks loads better when you come down all the way to the bobble stitches. But as I say, it's your own creation, so do whatever you think is best for you. And then once you are at the end, make sure you've got enough. I like to do literally to just before the bobble row. Give yourself a bit of a tail so that you can pull it through. And then I go into the body and pull that end through. With chenille yarn as well, it might stay poking up, so just make sure you tuck all the fluffy ends away. It can be a bit of a pain to work with. And then identify where your starting working tail is, and you just give that a little trim. I wouldn't pull it because you end up pulling through too much, but that is then your completed axolotl. There we go. Your nice little pink friend. You can make these in any colour, any shape, any size. Well, obviously not any shape, any size you like. You can use thicker yarns, you can use thinner yarns. This is quite a thin yarn actually, which is why they're smaller, but I think they're nice and cute and adorable. So the bigger the yarn and the bigger the hook you use, the bigger your creation is going to be. If you make these, please tag me. You can find my link tree in the description down below or on my channel. Please give me a little tag if you do it. I do want to see your creations. I do really love these little guys. They're perfect for markets. I sell these for about £12 usually, depending on the market. If my market is more expensive, if I've paid more for the table, they'll be about £14. If not, they're usually about 10 to 12, and it depends on the yarn I use. This yarn's a bit cheaper, so these will be 12 anyway. But yeah, make sure you tag me. Leave a like and a comment down below. Tell me what you think I can do differently. Tell me if you've made it. Tell me how you like the pattern, if you do, if you don't. If you would like to buy the written pattern, it will be available on my Etsy, and I will put the link in the description down below. So if you'd rather follow the pattern from there or just buy it to support me, because this is a free video, that is very much appreciated. There are other patterns on my Etsy as well, and my Ravelry too, so please go and check it out. Check out my channel for more tutorials. There's a whole playlist on how-tos, so please give that a little look at, and support me if you would like and if you can. Happy crocheting. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.